I seek to question gender and the supposed normal gender identities of masculine and feminine. I believe that these states, which we are programmed to accept as children and engulf us our entire lives, are just as constructed and artificial as those deemed outside the box.
Heroin.
Visual media sells us more than products to buy and fashion to copy. It tells us who we are and who we should be. Visual media reinforces a perfectly bisected society into which imperfection must be sorted. It sells us a lifestyle, values, an ideal image, but what's more, it sells us the idea of normalcy. My suggestion is that there is no ideal or normal gender identity. Gender is instead a performance. We all walk, talk, and act in ways which consolidate an impression of being masculine or feminine, beyond the biological factors and drives that make us fundamentally male or female. Society chooses a role for us, visual media sets an ideal, and we mimic a gender identity, just like drag performance.
When I was a little boy,
I hope to convince you that whilst we may conform to a consensually normal gender role and identity, we are in fact all drag artists. Feminist author Judith Butler, through her theory of gender performativity, suggests that gender is the repeated stylization of the body, a set of repeated acts within a hugely rigid regulatory frame that congeal over time to produce the appearance of substance of a natural sort of being. For Butler, gender is not an expression of some inner core. Our identities are free-floating. Gender, traditional or not, is performative. It's a series of acts, gestures, and desires repeated over time to become habit. Gender becomes a parody, an imitation of an imitation that has no essential origin. Not who we are, rather what we do, an effect of our performances. The various acts create the idea of gender. Without those acts, there would be no gender at all. It's not a question of whether to do a gender performance, rather its form.
For I am not Emily Kimberly. No, I'm not. I'm Edward Kimberly, the reckless brother of my sister Anthea.
holy Christ!
Butler suggests that the cultural practices of drag confirm the performative nature of feminine and masculine identities. They also display the instability between sex and gender. The drag identity is neither fully masculine nor feminine, but a complex collective of characteristics that challenge the usually divided view of gender held by society. Butler suggests, in imitating gender, drag implicitly reveals the imitative nature of gender itself, as well as its contingency. Drag performance plays upon the distinction between the anatomy of the performer and the gender that is being performed. The entire persona is a caricature of the opposite gender, revealing how stereotypical and fictitious social norms are. Divergence from these norms, through mimicry, allows us to change the binary nature of masculinity and femininity. Visual media bombard us with ideals, exceptions to which create conflict and make this medium the site of a semiotic war. Icons such as Lady Gaga revel in imitating the opposite gender and defying the gender binary. Similarly, drag queen RuPaul presents himself in both genders and is notably indifferent about gender-specific language. You can call me he, you can call me she, you can call me Regis and Kathy Lee, I don't care, just as long as you call me, me. As is drag king Dalla Grace Volcano.
Yeah. I really feel myself to be both male and female.
Photographs by Cindy Sherman and Gillian Waring conflict with mainstream visual media by showing that there is no default gender position. Any image is interpreted only by reference to other images. Their photographs offer visual experiences that hinge on our memories of other common images, from family snapshots to film stills. These representations evoke the familiar. The key to their meaning stems from our cultural knowledge of the generic as well as the precise. Sherman and Waring both evidence how normal gender identities can literally be mimicked, changed, or adapted by just one person. Fashion is a cycle that constantly revives and reinstates factors that reinforce normal gender identities. Normalcy is reduced to parts, revived and remade over and over again. Before Kate Moss, there was Twiggy. Before Dita Von Teese, there was Betty Page. imitation of image is a part of our visual culture and reinforces traditional stereotypes. Race, class, sexuality and gender, Elvis's appearance violated them all, whether through his dyed hair, stuffed crotch mascara, or his imitation of black music and style.
You ain't nothing but a dog. You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
Elvis was a mimic.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. She rock to the east, she rock to the west, but she's the gal that I love best.
He was produced as a series of detachable body parts, each having a life of its own: the curling lip, the hips, the hairstyle, the pseudonymic pelvis, all part of a presented image and all impersonated with passion to this day. Drag king Dal the Great Volcano in the Drag King book stated, Elvis was the consummate male performer because his entire act was an imitation. Marilyn Monroe, with her platinum blonde hair, curvaceous body, glamorous red lipstick and that much-copied beauty spot, was the epitome of femininity. These iconic attributes and the notion that blondes have more fun are, however, evident in periods long before the rise of Monroe in the 50s. During the Renaissance period, Rubenesque women dominated the ideal female body image. Evidently, the persona of Marilyn, manufactured by Norma Jean, was in itself a copy. Even 50 years after her death, Monroe is venerated still, forever referenced and imitated by adoring drag performers, Hollywood starlets, and even current fashion campaigns.
So I said Chanel number 5, because it's the truth.
Monroe was the personification of a stereotypical 50s woman, beautiful but submissive. Conversely, men were portrayed as dominant and sexually aggressive, something still prevalent within visual media today. Influential in constructing gender roles, omnipresent advertising instills and reinforces the collective expectations of gender, beauty, and normalcy. The result? Body image, homophobia, and sexism issues still permeate our culture. Whilst drag queens and arguably drag kings are becoming more mainstream, the ideals depicted in adverts which engulf our lives still deem them as outside the norm. RuPaul, writer, model and performer, is perhaps the leading drag queen in the world today. In a quest to liberate people's notions of normal beauty, RuPaul has built a successful career by accentuating all things feminine. Dewy skin, big eyes, even bigger hair, seductive gestures and immaculate makeup. His imitation of perfection, which is deemed elaborate and hyper-feminine, is in fact almost identical to the unattainable yet ideal images of women in everyday advertisements. Visual media has a strange hold of our social reality and perceptions of normal gender identities. From our earliest experiences, the marketing machine conditions us to employ copious resources to achieve perfection, or else be deemed a failure. But failure is inevitable, as ideals of beauty and gender identity are false, the misleading outcomes of digital airbrushing, advertisers, and Photoshop. Images of ideal femininity and masculinity are now so abundant they are deemed normal representations. The sheer volume of the same faces and bodies make these exceptional standards seem more and more achievable. In reality, these images are edited to a staggering degree. As feminist author and filmmaker Jean Kilbourne once stated,
"She never has any lines or wrinkles. She certainly has no scars or blemishes. Indeed, she has no pores."
Digital editing has become so extreme, some advertisements have even been banned. The heavy use of digital editing has distorted our ideas of normal masculinity and femininity. In reality, these visuals are just as constructed and accentuated as the appearances of drag queens. Photoshop becoming digital drag. We may all be conforming and expressing stereotypical gender norms, even by direct opposition to them. The act of drag serves to reinforce these gender conventions in an overstated way. It could be deemed over-conforming, as easily as being deemed outside the box. Gender ideals and normalities engulf our day-to-day visual culture, impacting upon our perceptions of drag kings and queens. It could be argued that in reality, everything is parody, and almost everything we do is simply a variation on what has been done before. As stated in RuPaul's autobiography, Letting It All Hang Out, we're born naked, and the rest is drag.